Hello, fellow travelers. This is Sandra, your hostess for today. I'm going to try to make this little recording a little brief here. It's just sort of impromptu. I wanted to talk about an insight that I had and hopefully ask you a couple of questions so that you can think about it during your contemplation or meditation throughout the day. I'd like to talk a little bit about actually prosperity. Let me go ahead and just define it real quick according to one dictionary. It's a successful, flourishing, or thriving condition, and of course associated with financial good fortune, right? Or financial success. So what I wanted to talk about today was something that I have been trying to deepen as far as prosperity is concerned, because most of us do consider being prosperous as having wealth, financial wealth. And that's not always the case. One of the situations that has been happening to me, and it occurred to me a couple of days ago as I've been trying to bring in more prosperity into my life, and I've been doing a lot of contemplative work on it and trying to expand my awareness within the realm of prosperity and what that means to me, what it means to my business, and be able to see if I can have some more breakthroughs, because I certainly want to be a prosperous person and I want prosperity to be in my life, and I really want that for other people that I know. One of the things that I have found for myself that is a little outside of the money situation, as I've been contemplating prosperity, I have also brought in what I would think I attracted into my life are resources. And those resources are made up of people. I've been extremely fortunate to have my niece Ashley help me out in creating and establishing the social media for Journey to Authentic Living. She's put in a lot of hours and time dedicated to me. She also turned me on to Scott, our website guy, who helped create Journey to Authentic Living's website. And then, of course, I've been putting a lot of time and effort and study and learning about social media and everything that has to do with social media. And some of you know that it really is quite an endeavor. I mean, it really is a full-time job, just learning about social media and how to utilize it for business purposes. And when you're in business for yourself, you're always learning, you're always growing and expanding your knowledge of how to improve on things, how to be able to get more exposure, and of course establish yourself as an expert in your field. Anybody does this who works for themselves. And so one of the beautiful things about all this is that I've noticed in the last couple of months how I have had more people come into my realm that I have met through social media, that I follow them and they follow me, and have just been giving me some great feedback. And this feedback isn't just one way, right? It's binary. And so I have been able to try to give back to them as they give to me. So somewhat of an exchange. And I really feel this is important to prosperity, because I do believe resources are prosperous. They can make us prosperous. They can give us the potential to succeed in what we want to achieve, whether it's just simply finding a book at the library because we need to read that. I mean, that's still a resource, right, that we can go to. My sharing right here isn't anything super exciting for me to tell you that I have had several other people that have offered to help me, to give me feedback, and they actually have, and I have implemented their suggestions. And I have also exchanged with them. Now, there is a particular gentleman, which I will not name because I didn't ask him permission to use his name, who is in the marketing field. And he was very kind one day and asked if he could research a couple of things for me, and he did. And he then sent me an email with some really great information. Prior to that, he had read one of my posts on personal development, and I had also offered for him to private message me so that I could share some tips with him. And as we were both private messaging each other, we both established the fact that we were not looking for money from each other, right? It was kind of like sometimes when people say, okay, private message me and I'll give you some tips, sometimes it implies that they want money. And in this case, thus far, has not been the situation. Of course, I'm sure that this gentleman would be more than delighted to have me as a client, and I would be more than delighted to have him as a client. But that's not where we're at. And I think this is what the important thing is. And I'm just speaking about what's happened until today, right? I have felt very prosperous with him. And I would hope to think he has felt this way with me, with my posts, right? Because he's given me compliments about how he's thought about certain things and it's given him something to think about and so forth. And this exchange is really quite beautiful because it precisely is that. It's an exchange. We both value each other's work. We value each other's time. We simply value, right? We're not taking each other for granted. We don't want to take advantage. He has given me more information than I have given him in my field, only because it's just turned out that way. So right now I'm thinking about 5 different people, some who I have compensated financially and others which I have not. But there are 5 different resources now that have come into my life that have helped me move forward with my business. What I would like to suggest is that the reason why I say that resource or resources falls under prosperity is because it takes us from one point to the other, right? I mean, think about in your daily life when perhaps you're looking for an eye doctor, or you're looking for a piece of furniture, and you just happen to come across a website that had an article that talked about a design that you like, or you spoke to a colleague of yours about needing to repair your vehicle, for example, and then they've given you the name of an individual. And these are all resources that sometimes we tend to take for granted, or maybe we might say, oh, you know, for that moment we feel this excitement that we were able to gather this resource or this piece of information, and then we forget about it. Or we can, you know, because we lead busy lives. And so many of us are looking to be more prosperous, and I feel that this falls under that category. It's really about the little things. It's not just about working really hard or paying a lot of money for something, and or receiving, I don't know, a huge gift, or receiving money from other people to move you forward in order for you to be prosperous. It includes these things, but it's not exclusive. I, by nature, am a pretty resourceful person. And through the years, I've learned to be even more resourceful. But I was never really taught resourcefulness from my parents. That's just not something that that was taught, that I had to learn through the years of growing up. And there were times where I was extremely frustrated. So when, for whatever reason, I was aligned, or the universe aligned me with an individual who could give me help or advice or a situation that I needed, I was always on cloud nine when this happened. I mean, I really relished in gratitude, because it was already difficult for me, because I just didn't have a lot of resources. And one of the resources that I really didn't have as a teenager and a young adult was actually money, which is another part of prosperity, right? So sometimes I couldn't thrive, but I learned to find ways to still get my needs met or my wants met. So for example, in the days where record players were around, right? So vinyls, before even probably CDs, because CDs came a little bit later. But when I was 16, 17 years old, we did not have CDs and we had record players. And so I did not have the money to actually buy records. They were pretty expensive for me. I had maybe just a couple of albums. So instead of feeling defeated, I knew that I could go to my local library. And in those days, you could borrow records, not just books. And so this is how I would become a lot more, how should I say, how I could increase my level of education in, for example, classical music, because I love classical music. So instead of feeling defeated, like I was saying, it was just a way for me to go to the library, or if I couldn't purchase books, I would go to the library, and read the classics and try to become more cultured. Art and humanities and history have always been so important for me, including philosophy. So this was a resource. The library was a resource for me. Or someone decided to give me a hand-me-down book, I would take it. Okay, so I guess the invitation for all of you is to look at what's happening in your life. So many times we take for granted somebody that really takes out the time exclusively for us to look at our website, to critique maybe something, give us feedback on an article that we want to publish, or perhaps give us a ride to the doctors if we don't have an automobile. And so the list goes on. Just use your imagination. We live in a world today where things are just not enough. It's never enough for people. And without trying to sound too much like the law of attraction type of person, I will invite all of you to think about who is in your life that really provides some good suggestions, some good advice, that carries you forward, that gives you that encouragement, that uplifts you when you're down, right? And also I want to leave you with a more provocative statement and then question. What about giving back as well? They call it now, there's this movement lately that's called pay it forward. But what about that? When you notice that you have a lot of people around you, or maybe just one individual, for example, or a resource that puts you in a position of prosperity, that puts you in a position of thriving, of more knowledge. Again, it could be a library giving you this, where you feel like, oh, I know I can go there and I feel really good and I'm able to become more educated because of this. Or, I don't have a lot of money and I know that my friend on Friday nights, can make me supper or something like that. I'm just sort of making it up right now. I'm just trying to, grab some examples. Or maybe it's the lady down the street who has a beautiful fruit tree and provides me all baskets of fruit sometimes, or bags of fruit, for free that I don't have to pay for, right? What are some ways that you can give back? If it's not always specifically to this person, because remember, I'm not talking necessarily, as we say in American, tit for tat. If I give you something, then immediately you have to give me something back. But over time, if you notice that someone is dedicating time to you, and they're providing something very important to help you evolve, or to help you thrive in your life, to help you become prosperous, sometimes saying thank you isn't quite enough. What can you do to exchange, or that is, expand yourself into really an action that would be beautiful? Could it be writing this person or a long letter, explaining how grateful you are? And then what can you do each day to bring that gratitude into your life? Look at your daily life and see all the resources that you have. Even if they're only one or two, it doesn't matter. Those resources are going to take you to the next level, to the next step, to the next phase in your life, if you just hold on to a little bit of faith. So I'm not going to be talking about scarcity mentality, because scarcity mentality, unfortunately, is a very negative human trait that we all have. But I will leave off with saying it is also about that, right? Let's look at, especially for those of us, whoever's listening right now that lives in the West, Canada, United States, Europe, we're so accustomed to having what we want. We think we don't, but we do. Most of our needs, can be met. What are some ways in which we can give back? Because remember, when we're just taking from other people, this isn't always the healthiest thing for our spiritual life, energetically, even for our person, right? I mean, we want to be able to sort of pay it forward, So these are just some things to think about, be open to that. And again, the key combo is prosperity and gratitude. And if someone is spending an enormous amount of time without compensation, without receiving love or gratitude from us, or some form of something, right? It is true that it can fall into enabling, right? I mean, if you're giving, then there might be something that you need to take a look at when we just give and not have any sort of, and compensation, by the way, doesn't have to be, again, money. But there's different ways. So I've given you a lot of information. This is quite impromptu. I apologize. I hope this sounds concise. I'm going to be listening to it here as I stop the recording. But I want it to be a little bit thought-provoking towards the end. And, let's begin to think about prosperity and how we can bring that into our lives. I certainly feel prosperous. I was almost falling in, I'll say this one last thing. I was almost falling into like, oh, I could have more clients, or I could do that, I'm not traveling right now to Europe to lecture like I used to. And I'm starting to kind of see, well, the lack of, right? Just almost barely falling into that. And then I pulled myself back and I said, well, wait a minute, I'm still prosperous. In fact, I know I am, because I have about 5 people right now. Some are a little bit more assertive in my life, people who really do want to help me, but I've also helped them as well. And we're helping each other become prosperous. And so I stopped right there in my tracks and I said, yes, this is prosperity. Thank you for this, and feeling that gratitude. So again, please think about your life. Think about how prosperity really is in your daily life. Just think about it. Wishing you all a great journey. Talk to you soon.